Hello and welcome to the studio. Today I'd like to talk about that funny weaving that race car drivers do on the formation lap before the start of the race. I'll go into the details of what it does, why they do it, and why it's actually not a good idea for many club racers and most track day drivers to copy what they do. So let's get right into it. The popular explanation for this odd weaving is that the drivers are trying to heat their tires to optimum operating temperature. And this is at least partially true, especially in series where they run dedicated racing slicks like Formula 1, IMSA Le Mans, and Super GT/DTM. Dedicated racing slicks are designed with soft, sticky compounds and stiff construction that helps them get up to temperature very quickly. When you have these sticky racing slicks on a car with massive amounts of mechanical and aero grip, it is possible to generate some pretty substantial heat in the tires just by weaving aggressively down the straights. But when I say substantial, I'm talking about a difference of 20 to 30 degrees Celsius, or about 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. It's nowhere near enough to get a room temperature tire to the 100 to 140 degrees Celsius that some of these tires need to work really well. Because of this, pro racing teams primarily rely on tire warmers or garage heaters to get their tires up to operating temperature. The main reason these drivers do this weaving is to keep these pre-warmed tires from cooling down too much during the slow formation lap or behind the safety car. However, this tire warming effect is substantially less prominent when you look at racing cars that use road-legal racing tires. These tires, commonly known as R compounds or S tires, are the staple of club racers and time attack drivers across the globe. While they are still very grippy compared to regular street tires, these road-legal racing tires have a very different construction and very different tread compound from dedicated racing slicks. That means that these road-legal racing tires don't warm up anywhere near as quickly as a dedicated slick. So this back and forth weaving down the straights just doesn't do as much for tire temperature. At best, you might be able to get the outermost layer of the tread to soften just a little bit, but the core of the tire will be just as cold as it was when you left the grid. So why do club racers even bother weaving? Well, there is actually a good reason for this, and the reason has to do less about keeping your tires warm and more about keeping the tread clean. Your race car's tires tend to pick up a lot of sand, gravel, and debris from the paddock as you drive back and forth between your parking spot and the pit lane. As you might imagine, having all this stuff in your tire tread is not very good for traction. Scrubbing the tires in the formation lap softens the outer layer of the tread just enough that the debris will naturally come off of the tread. And I will admit, this is actually a very satisfying thing to do as a driver. When you're in the car, you can actually hear the rocks and the dirt and the tire clag flying off the tread and bouncing off the bottom of the car. Hear that sound? That's the sound of the tire tread being gently exfoliated to a perfectly clean slate, so that your tires will be ready to go when the green flag drops. It's kind of like scrubbing all the dirt out of your hair in the shower after you spent all day working under your car. It sounds great and it feels so good. So if you have a dedicated racing car and run these road-legal R compounds or S tires, it may be worth it to do a bit of hard weaving during the first part of your formation lap. Just be very careful, and we'll get back to that in just a moment. Now, if you have a track day car or running a series that requires the use of high-performance street tires, you may want to pass on this whole weaving thing. That's because even the stickiest of high-performance street tires, like the Bridgestone RE71R or the Falken RT660, use tread compounds that are too hard and too durable to be warmed up by hard weaving. In addition, this fully treaded rubber has big voids that make it very difficult to scrub off rocks and gravel. Even if you do manage to scrub something off the tread, it's just likely to get stuck in the voids, clogging the tread and giving you less grip than you would have had otherwise. So really there's no advantage to doing it, but There's no harm to a little bit of weaving, right? After all, it makes you feel like you're a real racing driver. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but the answer is no. And in fact, it actually can be quite dangerous in some situations. From a distance, it might look like these cars are just gently swaying back and forth, but tire weaving is actually a very violent process. The drivers are actually throwing the car from side to side, pulling as many lateral Gs as they can to get the maximum amount of load on the tires. Usually they're pushing pretty close to the limit of lateral adhesion, and that makes it risky. One wrong move, and it's very easy to just lose control entirely. What makes this dangerous is the fact that you're sharing the track with other drivers. When you're weaving back and forth like this, it's very easy to lose track of the cars around you. You can't really turn your head to look around when you're throwing the car around like this, and your mirrors aren't going to show you very much when your rear view looks like this. Frankly, it happens all too often that two drivers misjudge their distances and crash into each other on the outlap, resulting in an expensive and frankly embarrassing situation. And that raises the question, is there a way for drivers to warm and clean their tires without the risks of weaving around all over the track? Thankfully, the answer is yes, there is another way. Instead of weaving to artificially load the tires down the straights, you can actually use the natural load transfer of the car through the corners and the braking zones to achieve the exact same effect. And here's how you do it. When you leave the pit lane, open up a little space between you and the car ahead, so you have a comfortable margin. I would say maybe 8 to 10 car lengths, at least. When you get to the corners, drive through them at about 70% of your normal cornering pace. That means you start braking at your usual brake marker, give the brake pedal a nice firm press, and drive through the corner at your usual line, about fast enough to generate 2/3 of the lateral Gs that you would pull on a normal lap. Then accelerate out of the corner, again at about 2/3 of your normal pace, and back off the throttle as soon as you reach the exit. It doesn't seem like much, but that's really actually all it takes. A full lap of this is actually enough to get your tires scrubbed, warmed up, and ready for you to start putting in fast laps. The reason this works is because modern street tires are capable of generating much more grip and much more heat under braking and acceleration than under cornering. Even at 70% of your car's maximum braking capacity, you're actually generating much more heat into your tires than you ever could by weaving back and forth down a short straight. By driving through the corners at a moderate pace and keeping that momentum, you generate the side loads needed to scrub the shoulders of the tread and retain the heat that you built up under braking. And then finally, by giving it a nice healthy boot of the throttle at corner exit, you'll be able to kick off any loose rocks and dirt that might have been embedded in the tire tread. More importantly, because you are driving predictably and not weaving down the straights like a lunatic, you will minimize the chances of you spinning off the track or crashing into another car on your very first lap of the day. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you at the track.